A faint siren moaned across Tehran's skyline as twilight swallowed the last gold glimmers of the day. Colonel Reza Darvishi stood on the rooftop of an aging apartment block, his silhouette etched against a smoke-veiled horizon. The city had grown quiet, not peacefully, but nervously, like a breath being held before a storm. Below, the hum of civilian life faltered. Markets shuttered. The air was thick with rumor and attention too old to name. A gust of hot wind carried the acrid scent of scorched rubber and fear. His phone vibrated against his chest. He glanced at it. A coded message blinked once. Then again. It's happening again. Get to the bunker. No sender. No need for one. He slid the phone back into his pocket and didn't move. His fingers traced the scar running from his left thumb to his wrist, a remnant of a different conflict, a different betrayal. The kind that doesn't make it into headlines. Reza's lips twitched into something almost like a smirk, but didn't quite make it. The city below him wasn't ready for what was coming. He wasn't sure he was either. Inside, the television flickered with breaking news. Southern provinces. Missile impact. Civilian areas targeted. Casualties unknown. Reza watched through the open window as a neighbor wept into her hands on a balcony across the alley, her cries blending into the television's clinical broadcast. The voice on the screen offered numbers, she offered grief. He walked down to the street where an armored car was already waiting. The driver, a young, stone-faced officer, saluted but said nothing. They drove in silence, past sandbagged checkpoints and shuttered shops. In the distance, the mosque's loudspeakers began reciting prayers that sounded more like eulogies. At the National Command Center, the mood was carved in iron. Generals, advisors, analysts, all swirled around giant screens glowing with maps, intercepted transmissions, and satellite feeds. In the center of it all, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei's chair sat empty, yet it commanded the room. Reza didn't sit. He stood at the back, unseen but deeply present. Preliminary intel suggests foreign interference, barked a general, his tone too sharp to be calm, too rehearsed to be genuine. Possibly Israeli drones again, or a proxy faction. Reza tilted his head. The patterns were familiar. Too familiar. We need to respond now, another voice pressed. The people want justice. Our enemies must understand, they can't touch us without consequence. But no one asked what the cost of consequence would be. Later, in a quieter hallway painted with framed portraits of martyrs, Reza paused at the image of his younger brother, Sami. Always smiling, even in uniform. Killed in a precision strike that wasn't supposed to happen. Collateral damage, they called it. Reza called it betrayal, by caution, by silence, by systems too slow to save the innocent. He had stopped attending memorials. Not because he didn't grieve, but because grief had hardened into something colder, heavier. Something that no anthem could thaw. He moved on, the echo of his boots bouncing against marble floors, and stepped into a hidden ward tucked beneath the intelligence annex. His mother lay in bed, pale and still. Her eyes followed the television, where a cleric condemned the recent attacks with poetic fury. She turned to her son. "You promised me peace, Reza. I remember your words." Her voice was cracked and low. "I remember them too," he replied, brushing her hair back. "But I didn't promise for others." She looked through him. "Then why do you serve those who make war look like duty?" Reza didn't answer. He kissed her forehead and left. Night deepened. In the back chamber of the intelligence wing, Reza joined a small team analyzing fresh intel, an intercepted message, scrambled and incomplete. It hinted at a hidden operative embedded in Tehran's outskirts, possibly coordinating strikes or identifying targets. Code-named Haggai, the file was old but now active again. The same codename had surfaced years ago, around the time of Sami's death. Something curdled in Reza's stomach. He hadn't thought of that name in a long time. "You're the only one with clearance and history on this," said his superior, sliding a black folder across the table. "We need you back in the field." Reza's eyes met his. "Why me?" "Because you've seen ghosts. And this one might know yours by name." He took the file. His hands didn't shake, but the silence around him seemed to pulse with old wounds. Outside, as he stepped into the night, a chill clung to the wind like a warning. His phone vibrated again. No message this time, just a single image: Sammy's grave. Desecrated. Spray paint across the headstone, red and fresh, * your silence brought this. What will your voice bring? *. He stood there, the grave marker burnt into his mind, the city humming with grief and fury beneath him. The choice that haunted him years ago now loomed again, but bigger, sharper, impossible to dodge. His silence had once cost him his brother. Another silence might cost him his nation. As the mosque bells rang for morning prayer, Reza finally spoke to the night air. This time, I won't whisper. A dust-cloaked sunrise broke across Iran's western borders, bathing the sparse desert in amber light as a black SUV rolled to a halt beside a seemingly abandoned outpost. The tires crackled against gravel, the silence broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine. Colonel Reza stepped out, dressed not in military fatigues but in the plain clothes of a civilian. Still, the way he moved, alert, precise, restrained, betrayed the years of command stitched into his every muscle. He glanced at the watch on his wrist, its cracked face a relic from another war, and approached the checkpoint. Inside, the command post smelled of dust, strong tea, and oil from old computers. Maps were pinned to the walls, some hand-drawn, others glowing on outdated monitors. At the center sat a girl no older than 25, typing furiously into a keyboard patched together with duct tape and prayer. Her black hijab framed sharp features and tired eyes that had seen too much code and not enough sleep. "You're early," she said without looking up. "You're young," Reza replied, folding his arms. She smiled faintly, not insulted. "Layla Nikrovan. Cyber Intelligence, Tehran Division. They say you used to be someone." "I still am." This time she looked at him. "We'll see." Reza set his bag down and unzipped it. He pulled out the classified file labeled Haggai, flipping it open on the dusty table. Photographs. Maps. Transcripts. One grainy image showed a figure outside a shrine 2 nights ago, head lowered, face partially concealed under a keffiyeh. "This is the closest we've come," Layla said, pointing to the image. "He uses old encryption techniques, Soviet-era layering. Analog slipstreams. No one's touched that since the 80s. Reza studied the image for a long moment. There was something in the posture, the way the man's hands were tucked inside his coat, familiar, like muscle memory he couldn't quite place. His voice was quieter now. "You think he's the one coordinating the strikes?" "We don't think," she replied, sipping tea. "We trace, we break, we confirm." He admired her confidence, though part of him knew it could crumble under pressure. Reza had seen that happen before, sharp minds snapped by the weight of real-world consequences. He took a seat and rubbed his temple. Something about the name Haggai bothered him. Not just the mission, it was personal. A code name whispered the same week Sami had died. Now it returned like a ghost with unfinished business. Hours later, Reza and Layla sat in a cramped surveillance van on the outskirts of Kermanshah, near an old caravanserai rumored to house rogue transmissions. Their equipment pulsed with static and flickers of intercepted chatter. The desert sun had climbed high, scorching the metal skin of the van. Inside, time passed in slow motion. Reza leaned forward, pointing at a screen. "There, freeze. That signal spike, 741 frequency, play it back." Layla's fingers danced across the keyboard. The screen replayed a coded burst of sound, too fast for human comprehension. "It's a trigger sequence," she murmured. "Shortwave relay, masking as a prayer broadcast." "That's clever." "And dangerous," Reza added. "Whoever this is, they are fluent in both faith and fear." Suddenly, static turned into words, scrambled, low, but human. "Phase 3, Shrine Perimeter, confirmed." They exchanged a glance. Reza grabbed the radio. "We move now." By twilight, they approached the shrine under cover of darkness. The city around it pulsed with quiet tension. Bazaars closed early. Children were kept indoors. And at the heart of the silence stood the shrine, its golden dome glinting under the moonlight, serene and unaware of the storm closing in around it. Riza and Layla ducked into an alleyway, weaving past rusted doors and half-lit windows. A man emerged from the shadows ahead, tall, black coat, scarf wrapped tightly around his mouth. He paused, sensing something, then turned. Riza shouted, "Down!" Gunfire erupted. The man ran. Riza chased, bullets kicking up dust behind them. Layla flanked from the right, intercepting the path. In a split second, the man pulled something from his pocket, not a weapon, but a flare. It lit the alley in crimson flame. In the moment of shock, he disappeared over a wall. The silence that followed was louder than the shots. Riza leaned against the brick, panting. His trained. And his not alone. Back at the van, Layla patched into nearby street cameras, tracing the route. She froze on one frame. "Look at this," she said. The screen showed a van parked near a school, too close, too still. The timestamp read tomorrow morning. Riza stared. It's not just the shrine. They want fear to ripple beyond faith. Children. Civilians. Layla nodded grimly. It's always about the message. The room felt colder suddenly, despite the desert heat. Later, as they returned to the border outpost, Riza took a seat outside under the stars. Layla joined him with 2 cups of thick, bitter coffee. "You ever get tired?" she asked, almost playful. "Of what?" "Being angry." He didn't answer for a long time. "My brother used to say something," he said at last. "That revenge is loud, but justice is quiet. I never understood it. I still don't know if I believe him." Layla sipped her coffee. "Maybe you're trying to make noise for someone who isn't listening anymore." He looked at her, surprised by the depth in her voice. She shrugged. "Just a theory." Before Riza could reply, a low buzz came from his phone. Another message. This time, it wasn't from command. An audio file. Just breathing. Then a whisper. "You're late again, Colonel." He stood slowly, his jaw tight. "Tomorrow," he said. "We find him. And when we do," Riza thought, "I won't let him disappear behind shadows and riddles. Not again." A storm gathered over Tehran, not in the sky, but in the hearts of its people. Markets buzzed with hushed speculations. Mothers gripped their children's hands tighter. Soldiers doubled patrols. And deep inside the walls of the National Security Compound, Colonel Reza Darvishi stood in front of a wall-sized digital map, watching a blinking red dot pulse like a warning heartbeat. The confirmed location of Khamenei. No more shadows. No more guesses. Layla stood beside him, arms crossed, her brow furrowed. Encrypted chatter suggests he'll be mobile by dusk. If we wait, his gun. Reza didn't blink. We won't wait. They descended into the briefing chamber, where a small elite unit had already assembled, lean men with quiet resolve. Reza paced in front of them, his voice low but ironclad. "We don't just apprehend. We intercept. No mistakes. No noise. We retrieve intel, stop the detonation plan, and bring him in alive, if possible." One of the soldiers raised a hand. "And if not?" Reza paused. "Then we bury the lie he's built." The convoy rolled out just after sunset. The city blurred past, saffron-colored street lamps smeared across the windshield like brushstrokes of warning. Reza sat in the lead vehicle, thumbing through Sammy's old prayer beads, now worn smooth by years of silent regret. Each bead passed through his fingers like a heartbeat, grounding him. He hadn't prayed in years, but tonight, the silence between the prayers felt heavier than the words themselves. They arrived in the southern industrial quarter, where warehouses slumped like forgotten titans. The air reeked of oil and rust. Layla's laptop pinged. The signal was live, transmitting from inside Warehouse 47. Reza signaled the team forward. Inside the building, moonlight leaked through cracked panels above. Shadows moved. A figure stood near a makeshift terminal, hooded, focused, alone. The man turned as Reza stepped into the light, gun raised. "Khamenei," Reza said evenly. The man didn't flinch. His face, when revealed, was older than expected, creased by time, but eyes sharp and too familiar. Riza's stomach turned. "I know you," he whispered. The man smiled, thin and cruel. "You should. I trained the one who trained you." Haggai raised a small transmitter. Riza fired first. The man dropped, but not dead. Blood spread beneath him, slow and thick. Riza knelt, grabbing the transmitter, smashing it under his heel. Haggai coughed, laughing even as blood bubbled on his lips. "You're too late. It was never just about me." Riza searched him, pulling a flash drive from the man's jacket. He tossed it to Layla, who plugged it into her terminal immediately. "It's a list," she breathed. "Targets. Schools. Shrines. Hospitals. Not one bomb, 10. Riza's voice cut in, flat and cold. "We need extraction. Now." But the radio only returned static. Outside, the warehouse perimeter burst into light. Drones, small, quick, deadly, circled in. A trap. Riza shoved Layla behind a crate as bullets shredded the door. 2 soldiers went down. The rest returned fire. It was a war in seconds. He crawled to Haggai, who was still alive, barely. "You think fear is strength?" Riza hissed. "You built chaos and called it justice." Haggai coughed again. "No. I built noise. You built silence. And it killed your brother." Riza's fist struck the man across the face. "No more words. Just fire and resolve now." Layla grabbed his arm. "Riza, we have to move. The drones will breach the wall." They ran, fire licking at their heels. The unit regrouped behind a freight container. Layla sent out a burst signal, jamming the drone's frequency long enough to buy seconds. Riza activated the emergency flare. A chopper appeared minutes later, descending like salvation from a burning sky. In the air, Layla leaned close, yelling over the roar of blades. "The flash drive has everything. Enough to stop the attacks. But it's not enough unless someone speaks." Riza didn't answer. He just looked out the window. Tehran shimmered below, dark and sleeping, unaware that it had almost been burned awake. Back at headquarters, the flash drive was decrypted and the targets confirmed. Detonators found. Cells dismantled. The death toll, 0. But the wound had been close, closer than anyone knew. The next day, Riza stood once again in the command chamber as Khamenei entered. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the supreme leader, but he gestured toward Riza instead. "You have seen with your own eyes," Khamenei said, voice calm but unwavering. "Tell the truth, not as a soldier, but as a witness." Riza stepped forward. "They wanted us afraid. They wanted silence, panic, division. But we listened to our dead, and they taught us how to speak." He paused. "Retaliation won't be loud. It will be precise. It will be justice, not vengeance." Khamenei nodded. Later that day, Iran issued a statement, not a threat, but a promise. A line drawn not in sand, but in stone. That evening, Riza visited Sami's grave once more. The sun had just dipped below the skyline. He knelt, rested his hand on the headstone, and whispered something no one else could hear. Behind him, Layla waited beside the car, watching quietly. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The wind moved gently through the cemetery, rustling the prayer flags, lifting dust like smoke into the fading light. A message had been sent, not through war, but through choice. A choice not to be quiet anymore. A curtain of heavy silence fell over the war room, disturbed only by the rhythmic ticking of the analog clock above the sealed steel door. Colonel Riza stood still, his frame lit by the flicker of satellite imagery streaming across the main monitor. His uniform, though freshly pressed, bore the weary folds of recent combat, and his eyes, sharp, steady, betrayed a burden far heavier than mission fatigue. Behind him, Layla adjusted the encrypted receiver, looping through the final drone feeds. The warehouse fire had been extinguished, the operatives neutralized, but Tehran was still trembling, not from blasts, but from the truth that had emerged. The enemy had crept deeper than anyone imagined. The decrypted flash drive had revealed more than targets, it outlined years of infiltration, psychological manipulation, and ghost agents in government ranks. Trust had eroded from the inside. Riza pressed his hand to the table as if anchoring himself to something solid. His silence had preserved lives, but it had also allowed rot to take root. This war wasn't about missiles anymore, it was about meaning, who controlled the story, who decided what truth looked like. General Beruz entered, flanked by 2 aides. His posture was rigid, his jaw clenched. The supreme leader wants a response crafted within the hour. Tactical or psychological? Preferably both. Riza nodded. I'll write it. The general raised a skeptical brow. With respect, you're not a writer. You're a soldier. I used to be neither, Riza said. Now I'm both. Later, in a private chamber near the communications tower, Riza sat before a worn wooden desk. It once belonged to his mentor, a man who believed wars were won not with weapons but with will. The window beside him offered a view of the city, its jagged skyline dark against the bruised violet of early evening. Somewhere out there, families were gathering for dinner, children laughing over fading fears. They had no idea how close the flame had come to their doorstep. That ignorance, Riza realized, was worth protecting. He began to write. To the enemies cloaked in shadows, the message started, you tried to bury us beneath silence, but we speak now, not in rage, but in resolve. You struck where we pray, where we teach, where we heal. You believed fear could scatter us. You were wrong. We do not scatter. We stand. Riza paused. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, then moved again with purpose. Let this be known, our response will not roar through the skies or explode in your streets. It will whisper through every system you built, unravel your networks, expose your lies. We are not chasing vengeance. We are building memory, so you are never forgotten, but always seen. When he was done, he saved the statement and slid the drive across the table to Layla, who had entered quietly behind him. You wrote it like a eulogy, she said after reading the message. It is, Riza replied. For what they tried to bury. She hesitated. The leader will read it on air. No, Riza said. He asked me to. That night, the broadcast aired on every major network and was streamed live across encrypted channels. The world watched not a politician, but a soldier, Riza, in uniform, standing behind a plain podium, speaking with the calm of someone who had seen the end and stepped back from it. He spoke of loss, not just of lives, but of identity, of how war used to be waged in deserts and borders, but now lived in data, in stories, in silence. He called for vigilance, not fear, for justice, not retaliation. And when he finished, he said one line that would echo far beyond Iran's borders. The next blow won't be louder. It will be clearer. After the broadcast, the city did not erupt in cheers or panic. It stood still, listening. For the first time in years, Riza felt something he hadn't known he missed, dignity. Not in victory, but in clarity. But clarity came with cost. The following morning, a package arrived at headquarters. No return address. Inside was a single, charred prayer bead, one of Sammy's. A message etched on a metal tag, words can't shield you forever. Riza stared at it for a long time. Then he placed the bead into a small glass box beside his medals. A reminder, not of threat, but of why he spoke. In the weeks that followed, Iran launched a precise, invisible campaign, cyber dismantling of enemy propaganda networks, exposure of false narratives, public unmasking of double agents. The world watched as something unprecedented unfolded, a war of memory, led not by bombs, but by words, facts, and truth. Layla grew into her role, now the head of cyber operations. She once told Riza, "We can't change the past, but we can weaponize it against those who repeat it." He had smiled at that. On the first night of spring, Riza returned to Sammy's grave. This time, he brought a single red tulip. He placed it carefully against the headstone, brushing away the last of the spray paint that had once defiled it. "I found your silence," he whispered. "And I gave it a voice." As he turned to leave, the wind picked up, rustling through the cemetery, carrying with it the faint, warm scent of blooming earth. The storm had passed. The message had landed. But Riza knew peace wasn't permanent. It was a decision, made each day, by those willing to speak, to stand, and to remember. And if silence ever tried to return, he would be waiting.